Today, we're diving into a massive, multi-million-dollar mystery right in the middle of the 2026 World Cup. We're looking at a brand new rule introduced by FIFA, mandatory hydration breaks. Now, on paper, this was rolled out as a progressive measure to protect player health. Sounds great, right? But as we dig into the data, the expert testimony, and the actual on-pitch mechanics of how these breaks are functioning, a totally different picture emerges. We're going to explore how what looks like a simple pause for water is fundamentally destroying the tactical momentum of football, completely hijacking teams' substitution strategies, and generating an absolutely staggering amount of money in the process.
I mean, to see how this actually plays out in reality, you literally just have to look at day one. During the opening match of the 2026 World Cup between Mexico and South Africa, FIFA's official rule was put to the test. The rule is supposed to be clear, a strict 3-minute pause, whistle to whistle. But that is not what happened. Fox Sports' commercial break actually ran long, so when the referee blew the whistle to restart the live action, viewers at home were still staring at an advertisement. Fans completely missed the live restart on day one. This embarrassment immediately shattered the illusion of that strict 3-minute limit, and it provided a super honest introduction to what these breaks actually prioritize. It's the commercial inventory, not the live football. And you know what's crazy? The advertising industry isn't even really hiding it. They've been surprisingly open about this whole player health narrative. Take Rory Sutherland, a really prominent analyst at Ogilvy. He openly argued that FIFA basically pulled off a masterstroke, or as he put it, they played a blinder by rebranding an ad break as a hydration break. As our source material points out, Sutherland noted that if you just call them ad breaks, well, the fans will revolt. But by calling them hydration breaks, it suddenly becomes incredibly hard to argue against. It gives them just enough of a physiological excuse to make the commercial intrusion totally defensible.
So, let's talk numbers, because the sheer scale of the financial incentive driving this is insane. Reports project that the U.S. host broadcaster, Fox, stands to make up to $250 million from these specific hydration break ads alone. We're talking about artificially manufactured commercial windows where later-stage tournament breaks are expected to command prices comparable to Super Bowl spots. And major brands like AT&T, Michelob Ultra, Lowe's, and FanDuel, they're already filling this newly created inventory. $250 million, all generated from pauses that FIFA looked us in the eye and said existed solely to protect player welfare.
Okay, so how did FIFA actually secure this inventory? Well, we have to look back at their December 2025 rule rollout. They announced that every single match, absolutely no exceptions, would feature a mandatory 3-minute hydration break at the 22nd and 67th minutes. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. It is enforced regardless of the weather and regardless of the temperature. FIFA insisted this universal rollout was to ensure consistent competition conditions. But honestly, as the sources suggest, what was actually being ensured was a consistent commercial inventory for the broadcasters. And this rigidity is causing a massive fundamental shift in the sports structure on the pitch. Historically, football is a game defined by fluid, continuous play over 2 uninterrupted halves. That's the beauty of it. But by injecting these forced, immovable stoppages, the game is suddenly being chopped up into a rigid 4-quarter sport. It's perfectly mirroring American sports like the NFL or NBA, which are built from the ground up for advertising windows. But traditional football isn't designed that way, and forcing it into this mold has severe consequences for the momentum and the flow of the game.
To really grasp the impact of this, don't just take my word for it. Let's look at what the experts on the touchline are saying. England head coach Thomas Tuchel gave some really telling testimony here. He explicitly stated that these breaks interrupt and change the very identity of a football match way more than he anticipated. For a manager, football is all about momentum, right? You scheme, you press, you build pressure over time. Tuchel points out that it's incredibly hard to build that momentum and even harder to keep it when the game is artificially stopped just as your team is finally hitting its stride.
And Tuchel is for sure not alone in this. French manager Didier Deschamps echoed this exact same sentiment. Notice how multiple world-class managers independently keep using that dreaded phrase, 4 quarters. Deschamps highlighted that splitting the halves completely disrupts momentum, leaving them playing 4 quarters where there used to be 2 halves. So this isn't just a quick pause for the players to catch their breath. For the managers, it literally represents the death of tactical momentum. The organic, natural ebb and flow of the match is being sacrificed for a scheduled commercial.
Hijacking strategy, the 67th minute substitution trap. Let's move into the second half now, because this commercial intrusion actually builds into a much deeper tactical nightmare for coaches. It goes way beyond just losing momentum. Think about the traditional second half timeline for a second. The absolute most critical window for a manager to make game-changing second-half substitutions is usually right between the 60th and 70th minute. This is when fatigue starts setting in, and tactical adjustments are absolutely paramount. But look exactly where the forced commercial break lands, right at the 67th minute. FIFA has essentially dropped a mandatory and movable stoppage straight into the middle of a manager's most vital strategic window.
Norway coach Ståle Solbakken pointed out this exact dilemma. Because of this perfectly timed 67th minute stoppage, teams are now being forced to restructure their entire substitution strategy around a commercial window. Think about that. Managers spend months meticulously preparing these tactical flows, only to have to tear them up and reorganize them just to accommodate FIFA's advertising schedule. It is a complete hijacking of on-pitch strategy by corporate commercial interests.
And again, what's the official justification for all this disruption? Player health. But the players themselves are exposing just how absurd this disguise really is. Take Netherlands captain Virgil van Dijk. After playing in a climate-controlled, air-conditioned stadium in Arlington, Texas, he actually laughed when he was asked about the hydration breaks. He pointed out that going to commercial every time wasn't something he liked, and he noted it wasn't great for the neutral viewer either. I mean, you have the captain of one of the world's best national teams literally laughing at the idea that anyone out on that pitch desperately needed an emergency water break inside an air-conditioned room.
Which brings us right to the core contradiction that FIFA has never truly been able to resolve. If this policy is exclusively about player health and safety like they claim, why is the break mandatory in a refrigerated dome set to 68 degrees? Or, as we saw with Ghana's match against Panama, why is it being enforced in Toronto when the weather is in the completely comfortable low 70s? Players who genuinely do not need water are being stopped for water, all while a commercial plays on screens around the globe. The welfare angle provides the cover, but the universal enforcement reveals the truth.
And the fans, quite predictably, are just not buying the excuse. The pushback has been massive and highly visible. In stadium after stadium, the second that whistle blows for the hydration break, a huge wave of loud, collective booing rings out. It's the most visceral, instinctive signal an audience can send that they reject this commercialization. Plus, at home, fans are actively switching broadcasters. Many are tuning into the Spanish-language provider Telemundo specifically because Telemundo made the choice not to play commercials during these mid-half pauses. The audience is taking direct action to avoid the exact ads FIFA engineered for them.
But it's not just the fans pushing back, it's the wider football institution itself. UEFA, the governing body of European football, took one look at this commercial hijacking at the World Cup and completely banned it for their own competitions. They officially rejected the breaks, confirming there are absolutely no plans to deviate from the traditional uninterrupted two halves for the Champions League and the 2028 European Championships. This verdict, coming from inside the Sports Zone structure, is by far the clearest signal yet that these breaks are not some great innovation or welfare measure. They are a deeply unpopular commercial decision.
Which leaves us with one final, very provocative question. As we look at the incredible financial windfall these breaks are generating, is UEFA's pure, commercial-free stance actually going to hold? Or is that $250 million Fox is making from these manufactured stoppages eventually going to make the traditional, uninterrupted game impossible to sustain? When you're watching a match and that whistle blows, does it just feel like a minor inconvenience to you? Or do you feel the very identity of the game shifting? I really want to know what you think. Tell me down in the comments, because these are the exact conversations that matter for the future of the sport. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you see on the screen.